Ignorance produces overconfidence, produces ignorance, produces overconfidence, produces... In 1999, David Dunning and Justin Kruger did studies and wrote a paper that revealed that people tend to hold overly favorable views of their abilities in many social and intellectual domains. They suggest that this overestimation occurs in part because people who are unskilled in these domains suffer a dual burden. Not only do these people reach erroneous conclusions and make unfortunate choices, but their incompetence robs them of the metacognitive ability to realize it. It formalized something that people intuitively recognized, that incompetent people often don't know that they're incompetent. The skills needed to be good at something are often the same skills needed to recognize whether you're good at it. It's not just about ignorance and arrogance. Experts actually do underestimate themselves relative to their peers, partly because they assume tasks that are easy for them are easy for everyone, sometimes called the curse of knowledge. The effect is stronger in areas where incompetence is hardest to recognize: abstract reasoning, social skills, technical expertise. It's weaker in concrete, measurable domains where feedback is more clear and immediate, such as video games with clear scoring systems, timed athletic events, standardized tests, games with physical constraints. The common thread is immediate, objective feedback. Compare these to things like, am I a good manager? Or do I understand this complex policy issue completely? The metrics are fuzzy, feedback can be delayed or ambiguous, and it's easy to attribute failures to external factors. The core psychological mechanism is that competence and self-awareness are intertwined. Cognitive biases compound this. Without experience, you have no baseline. A novice chess player might feel really proud of a move because they captured a piece, not realizing they just gave up a positional advantage. They're making judgments without the reference point a more skilled player might use. People naturally notice evidence that supports their self-image while dismissing contradictions. If you think you're a good debater, you'll remember the times that people nod along in agreement, not the eye rolling. Beginners often have a simplified view of a domain. They see the surface level task, but miss the complexity beneath it. Someone learning to cook might think following the recipe is all there is to it, not realizing all the adjustments to ingredients or conditions that expert cooks might use. On the flip side, experts underestimate themselves because they have internalized so much that tasks feel effortless, so they assume everyone finds them easy. A mathematician might think basic calculus is obvious, forgetting how much foundational knowledge it requires. They also see vast landscapes of what they don't know, while beginners can't even perceive those gaps. There are some psychological markers that can influence this as well. Personality traits. People who naturally question their own thinking and stay open to being wrong show less of the effect. They are more likely to seek feedback and update their self-assessments. Unsurprisingly, narcissistic individuals are more prone to overconfidence across domains. They are motivated to maintain an inflated self-image and resist contradictory feedback. People who enjoy thinking deeply and analytically tend to be more accurate in self-assessment. They are more likely to test their own assumptions. This one might seem counterintuitive. Higher general intelligence doesn't necessarily protect you from Dunning-Kruger when entering a new domain. Smart people can be just as overconfident as anyone else when they are genuine novices. However, they may move through the incompetent but confident place faster because they learn more quickly. Some research suggests the effect is weaker in East Asian and similar cultures that emphasize collective harmony and self-criticism over individual achievement, while Western and similar cultures that valorize confidence may amplify the effect. People who have worked in fields with harsh, immediate feedback like surgery, piloting, competitive sports, often develop better calibration that transfers somewhat to other areas. They have been humbled before. Some people naturally think more about their thinking. They ask questions like, how do I know this? What could I be missing? This habit can be learned and it reduces overconfidence, but simply knowing about Dunning-Kruger doesn't protect you from it, though it might make you more cautious in unfamiliar domains. You see this effect show up constantly in everyday life. The new employee who comes in and confidently proposes, as opposed to the person with 15 years of experience who hedges every recommendation with caveats because they've seen how things work. Job interviews are a prime example of this as well. In conversations, notice how confidently people discuss complex topics like economics, geopolitics, climate science, often after just reading an article or scanning Wikipedia, compared to people who have studied it deeply that say things like, it's complicated, or there's still a lot to learn. There's still a lot we don't know about this. The dinner guest who dominates the discussion about Middle East politics versus the guy with a PhD who mostly just asks questions. Parenting. People with no kids who have very strong opinions about how to raise them properly. Technology. Someone who just discovered cryptocurrency explaining why traditional finance is now obsolete. A person who can change their own oil once, giving detailed advice about engine repair. The guy who did his own research on any number of overly complex subjects. Driving. Most people will say that they are above average drivers. How's that possible? Most of us probably get yelled at on the road at least as much as we yell at that idiot. Social skills. The people who dominate conversations often think they're really good at communication. Those who have studied communication deeply tend to talk less and listen more, being aware of how much they might be missing. Do-it-yourself projects. How hard can it be? Famous last words before discovering why the plumber charges so much. The YouTube tutorial watchers versus the contractor that knows about permits, load-bearing walls, code requirements. Do you want the guy that watched a video installing your new breaker box? There's a pattern here. Confidence peaks right after you've just learned enough to feel like you understand something, but before you've learned enough to see the complexity. Recognizing this in yourself can be challenging because the effect makes you blind to your own blind spots. There are some strategies to try though. If you think you're good at something, find ways to measure it. Think you're a great writer? Submit to publications and track your acceptance rate. Good at investing? Calculate your actual returns versus index funds. Articulate? Record yourself and listen back to it. This can be illuminating. Actively seek disconfirming evidence. Force yourself to ask, what would prove me wrong? Instead of looking for support for your views, specifically hunt for credible people who disagree and really engage with their arguments. If you can't articulate the strongest case against your positions, you probably don't understand the domain well enough. Before you become confident about something, imagine explaining it to someone with real expertise on the subject. What questions might they ask that you couldn't answer? Where would you have to say, I'm not sure? Those gaps are real. Track your predictions. Write down specific predictions with probabilities. I'm 80% sure this project will take 2 weeks, and then track what actually happens. Over time, you'll be better able to see if your confidence matches reality. Many people discover they're overconfident. Learn the basics of a related skill. Want to see if you really understand nutrition? Try learning about biochemistry. Economics? Study some formal models. This adjacent technical knowledge often reveals how much you are oversimplifying. Pay attention to your emotional reactions. When someone challenges your understanding, do you get defensive? That might be a sign you're in Dunning-Kruger territory. Experts typically find challenges interesting rather than threatening because they are comfortable with uncertainty. Try teaching someone a skill and have them succeed. Not just explain it, but actually transfer the ability. Teaching reveals gaps fast. Ask me how I know. Ask better questions. If you're mostly making statements rather than asking questions, you're probably overconfident. Experts ask a lot of questions because they see nuance everywhere. Are recognized experts in general agreement with your view? Or do you think you've figured out something that they've all missed? The latter is a big red flag unless you have some extraordinary evidence. Deliberately practice being wrong. Make small predictions about things you can verify quickly and get comfortable with being incorrect. This builds the muscle of updating based on evidence rather than protecting your self-image. Assume incompetence as your default when entering new territory. Only upgrade your self-assessment based on external validation, not internal feelings of confidence. Confidence is not evidence. There's a lot of overlap with Dunning-Kruger and the unknown unknowns I talked about last week. I'll probably do more videos on the overlaps and cross-pollination of all these different types of ignorance near the end of this series. Some research has pointed out this irony. Many people read about Dunning-Kruger and immediately feel confident that they can point it out in others, especially political opponents, without recognizing that they may be experiencing it themselves in their understanding of cognitive bias research. There is probably a Dunning-Kruger effect about the Dunning-Kruger effect. I will probably also have more to say about why it shows up, especially in political opponents. That is a rich area to dig around in. But until next week, when I dig into pluralistic ignorance, I hope this has been interesting, enlightening, helpful, and not too depressing for you. Thanks for watching.